A barefoot little girl walked up to two cops and said, "Can you follow me home?" What they found inside that apartment left them speechless. It was around 5:45 on a Thursday evening when Officer Troy Daniels adjusted the rearview mirror of his cruiser, barely paying attention to the kids riding bikes up the cracked sidewalk behind him. He was more focused on the paperwork he hadn't finished back at the station and the headache creeping behind his eyes. His partner, Officer Malik Harris, sat in the passenger seat, sipping coffee that had long gone cold. They were parked outside a small corner store in West Lubbock, Texas. Not the worst part of town, but far from the best. Folks kept to themselves around here. No one waved. No one smiled. The kind of place where the air felt thick, like it was holding its breath. That's when she walked up. No shoes. A pair of shorts too big for her tiny frame. Hair pulled back into uneven puffs with pink and yellow rubber bands. She couldn't have been more than 8. She didn't cry, didn't stutter, just stood quietly beside the patrol car until Harris noticed her. "Hey there," he said, cracking the window. "You all right?" She looked up, wide-eyed, with a face too serious for someone that young. "Can you follow me home, please?" Daniels leaned over. "What's going on? You lost?" She shook her head. "No, my house is right there." She pointed, and both officers followed her gaze across the lot, past the faded mural on the side of a barber shop, down the narrow street, lined with chain-link fences and busted porch lights. Daniels frowned. "Your parents home?" "I don't got parents," she said simply. "Just my grandma, but she's not getting up." There was something about the way she said it, flat, calm, like she'd already tried everything she knew how to do, that made both men sit up straighter. Harris opened his door. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Journey." "Journey what?" "Journey Wallace." Daniels grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 3C responding to a possible medical at 1623 Eastover Drive, Apartment 2B, minor requesting assistance." The dispatcher confirmed, and Journey had already started walking, no running, no glancing back. Just slow, steady steps like she'd made that walk more times than she could count. The two officers followed on foot. Daniels stayed a few steps behind, observing. Harris walked closer to her, asking soft questions. She didn't say much, just pointed out cracks in the sidewalk or where the dogs usually bark, but weren't today. Something about the way she moved, calm but urgent, gnawed at them both. Kids panic, kids cry, but not Journey. And it wasn't just her. The neighborhood had that feeling too, trash bins overflowing, yards that hadn't seen a mower in months. Windows patched with cardboard, a quiet tension hung between the houses, like people were waiting for something to go wrong and they expected it would. Daniels broke the silence. "Journey, is your grandma sick?" She hesitated. "She fell this morning. I thought she was sleeping at first. Then I tried to wake her up and she didn't move. So I gave her the last apple we had and some water, but she just stayed asleep." She looked down. "I think she's real sick." Harris looked at Daniels. No one needed to say it. They'd both heard that tone before. It wasn't drama. It wasn't imagination. It was survival. And they were already too late for comfort. Journey turned a corner and pointed up a stairwell where the rail was broken halfway through. Second floor. Door cracked open. "She told me once, if something ever happened and she couldn't help, I should find someone in a uniform," Journey added. "I saw your car and figured maybe you'd come." She looked up at them both like she wasn't even sure she had the right. But that quiet confidence, the kind built by having no other choice, kept her feet moving. The officers followed her up the stairs, unsure of what they'd find behind that door, but knowing they couldn't turn away now. But what waited inside apartment 2B would stay with them for the rest of their lives. Journey didn't knock when she reached the door. She just nudged it open with the side of her small hand and walked inside like she'd done it 100 times before. Daniels put a hand on his holster, just in case, while Harris gave a glance toward the hallway. Instinct more than anything. The smell hit first. It wasn't death, not yet, but it was close. The kind of sour, heavy air that clung to your nostrils and told you something had been wrong for a while. Daniels stepped in behind her, eyes scanning. The floor creaked beneath his boots. The apartment was dark, not pitch black, but dim, like someone had tried to stretch the light from a single lamp as far as it would go. One bulb flickered in the kitchen, and a fan whirred in the corner, though it wasn't moving any air. The curtains were pinned up with thumbtacks and grocery bag ties. A pot sat on the stove, long dry. a bag of rice half spilled on the floor. Journey stepped over it without a word. "Where's your grandma, baby?" Harris asked gently. Journey turned to the living room and pointed. There, sprawled halfway across the couch and the floor, lay an older woman in a faded house dress. Miss Laverne Wallace. She wasn't moving. Daniels moved fast, checking her pulse, calling her name. "Ma'am, Laverne, can you hear me?" Nothing. Her skin was pale around the mouth, damp with sweat. There was a faint pulse, but it was slow, too slow. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. "Looks like she's still alive," Daniels said, pulling out his radio. "Dispatch, we need EMS immediately. Female, late 60s, unresponsive but breathing. Possible diabetic or cardiac episode." Harris crouched near Journey, who stood perfectly still, her arms wrapped around herself. "Have you been here alone all day?" She nodded. "I gave her water. I used the turkey baster from the drawer. It's how she gives the plants water." Daniels looked toward a dying pothos plant on the windowsill. Dried, curling leaves. The soil was cracked. "I didn't want to leave her, but I didn't know what else to do," Journey said. "We don't have a phone no more." Harris tried to smile, soft but honest. "You did exactly what you should have, Journey." The girl looked around. "It's not usually this messy. Grandma always cleaned." Daniels took in the room. Torn cushions, a coffee table missing a leg, propped up with books, an ashtray with a single stubbed cigarette, a stack of unopened mail by the door, most of it stamped with red ink. Final notice. Harris whispered, "They've been struggling." Daniels didn't answer. He just walked slowly toward the hallway, glancing into the small bedroom where the sheets were bundled in a corner and a space heater stood unplugged. A child's drawings were taped to the wall, stick figures of a girl and an older woman holding hands. A big sun with a smiley face above them. Back in the living room, Journey picked up a damp rag from a bowl of water and pressed it to her grandmother's forehead. She did it gently, like she'd done it before. "She don't like cold water on her neck, so I only use it here," she said, tapping the woman's temple. "She said it makes her brain feel better." Daniel stared for a second, his throat dry. "You've been doing all this by yourself?" She nodded again. "I'm the only one who stays with her now. It's just us. Grandma says we don't need nobody." Outside, sirens began to wail faintly in the distance. "You did the right thing coming to us," Harris said. Journey looked at him, her face blank but her eyes heavy. "I didn't know if you would care." Daniels crouched down beside them. "We care." She blinked. "People usually don't." No one said anything for a moment, just the sound of the old fan clicking behind them and the faint wheeze of Miss Laverne's chest rising and falling. Daniels rose and peeked in the fridge. 2 eggs, a bottle of mustard, and a near-empty jug of milk sat inside. That was it. No lights in the back rooms. No working AC, no signs of recent groceries. This wasn't just one bad day. This was a pattern. This was quiet poverty, the kind nobody reports because nobody sees it, until it gets this far. But when EMS finally arrived, what they found pushed the situation from serious to heartbreaking. 2 paramedics pushed through the door like they'd done it 100 times, fast, focused, and quiet. One was in his 40s, with a graying beard and sharp eyes. The other was younger, maybe mid-20s, already sweating under his vest. They crouched down beside Miss Laverne. The older one checked her vitals, while the younger unrolled a blood pressure cuff. Harris stepped back to give them space, but Journey didn't move. "She don't like strangers touching her," she whispered. "It's okay," Daniel said. "They're just here to help." Journey didn't respond. She watched every move the medics made like she was waiting for them to do something wrong. "She's dehydrated," the older paramedic said. "BP's way too low. She needs fluids, probably glucose. Could be diabetic, could be something else." "When did she go down?" "Journey says this morning," Daniels replied. "Has she been responsive at all?" "Negative." "All right," he sighed, signaling his partner. "Let's roll." The stretcher was brought in. Laverne's head lolled slightly when they lifted her, but she didn't wake. Her lips were chapped, her skin cold to the touch. The medics worked quickly, running an IV line, wrapping straps around her arms and legs. She looked small on that stretcher, much smaller than she seemed lying on the floor. Journey followed, silent, all the way to the door. "Is she going to be okay?" she asked, her voice small. "We're going to do everything we can," the older medic said without looking up. "Can I ride with her?" Daniels and Harris exchanged glances. Do you have any other family here? Daniels asked. Journey shook her head. It's just me and her. What about neighbors? She hesitated. We don't really talk to them. Harris crouched down beside her. You can ride in the cruiser, all right? We'll follow right behind. Then we'll see what's next. She looked back at the apartment, at the couch, the fan, the open mail. Then she whispered something so quiet they almost missed it. Can I bring my notebook? Daniels nodded. Go ahead. She walked to the bedroom and came back with a spiral-bound notebook, worn and bent at the corners. On the cover was a sticker of a purple butterfly, faded and peeling. She clutched it like it was something alive. They walked her down the stairs slowly. She didn't say anything, just held onto the railing with one hand and the notebook with the other. The paramedics loaded Laverne into the back of the ambulance and shut the doors. Daniels opened the back door of the patrol car for Journey. She paused before getting in. Will they let me stay with her? I don't know yet, he said honestly. She got in without another word. As Harris pulled away from the curb, Daniels looked out at the street. Kids still rode bikes. A dog barked from behind a chain-link fence. No one seemed to notice the ambulance or care why it was there. This neighborhood's invisible, he muttered. What do you mean? Harris asked. Daniels shook his head. People walk by, drive through, but they don't see anything. This girl's been surviving in that apartment for who knows how long. Where's the school? Where's the social worker? The neighbors? The pastor? Harris didn't answer. He just kept driving. At the hospital, they were met by a nurse who led Laverne's stretcher through the emergency bay and behind double doors. Journey tried to follow, but was stopped gently. Let the doctors work first, okay? The nurse said. Journey turned to Daniels. I don't like waiting. I know, he said. Me either. They waited in the corner of the ER lobby, Journey clutching her notebook, her feet swinging just above the floor. Daniels pulled out his phone and stepped outside. He called in to report the situation. While he talked, Harris stayed with Journey, noticing for the first time how skinny she really was. Not just small, underfed. Her socks didn't match. Her backpack was tied with a shoelace. Her eyes darted constantly, even when she sat still. Harris leaned over. What do you write in there? Journey shrugged. Things I want to remember. Like what? Like how to spell ambulance. Harris smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. But the next thing she told him, and what was written inside that notebook, made Harris feel something tighten in his chest. Journey sat still in the waiting area, notebook balanced on her knees, thumb tracing the edge of the butterfly sticker. Harris watched her for a moment, then leaned closer, voice gentle. Mind if I see what you've written? She hesitated, then held the notebook out slowly, like it was something private she wasn't sure she should be sharing. He took it carefully and opened to the first page. The handwriting was uneven, but determined. Each letter formed with care. The first entry read, If Grandma don't wake up, wait until morning. If still not up, check for breath. If breathing, give water and whisper Bible verses. Then wait again. He flipped to another page. No school today, no bus. Leftover rice. Grandma said she's dizzy. I held her arm so she don't fall in the tub. Water was cold, but she didn't say nothing. Another page. If we get kicked out, we sleep at church. Don't lose Grandma's medicine bag. Ask for officer in blue, not security guard. Security guard won't help. Harris swallowed hard. This wasn't a journal. This was a survival guide. Written by a child who'd stopped thinking like a child a long time ago. Journey looked up at him. I write so I don't forget what to do. He handed it back carefully. That's smart. Real smart. She nodded, but there was no pride in it. Daniels walked back inside, rubbing the back of his neck. They've stabilized Laverne. She's going to ICU for observation. Docs say she's lucky. Lucky, Harris repeated under his breath. Daniels glanced at Journey. There's something else. No ID, no insurance, nothing in the system, and nobody listed as emergency contact. Harris sighed. That checks. CPS has been notified, Daniels added. Journey stiffened. What's that? She asked. Harris looked at her. It's the people who help when kids don't have someone to take care of them. Her voice cracked. But I do have someone. I have Grandma. Daniels crouched in front of her. I know, but she's really sick right now, and until she gets better, they might have to make sure you're safe too. I am safe. I believe you, he said, but it's not just about today. It's about making sure there's always food in your fridge, lights that turn on, someone who can help you with homework, things you're not supposed to do all by yourself. Journey looked down at her shoes. I don't need help with homework, she mumbled. I just need her to wake up. Neither of them knew what to say to that. The hospital social worker arrived 20 minutes later, a tall woman in a tan sweater with a clipboard and kind eyes that didn't seem to blink enough. She introduced herself to the officers first, then to Journey. I'm Ms. Darnell. Can I talk to you for a minute, sweetheart? Journey shrank into the seat. No, thank you. Ms. Darnell crouched to eye level. I just want to ask you a few questions. That's all. Nothing scary. Journey shook her head. I already talked. I told the police. The social worker looked at Daniels and Harris. She's scared, Harris said. She's been alone, Daniels added. Longer than anyone realized. Ms. Darnell nodded. I'll keep it simple. She sat beside Journey and opened a small folder. Can you tell me the last time you had a meal? Journey shrugged. Yesterday? What did you eat? Toast. Anything else? Peanut butter, but it was at the bottom and tasted funny. She asked about school, about relatives, about how often her grandmother had passed out before. Journey answered every question like it was a math problem. Straight, precise, no tears. Then Ms. Darnell asked, Has your grandmother ever asked you to keep secrets from other adults? Journey looked up sharply. She told me not to trust people who act like they want to help, but only show up when it's too late. Ms. Darnell blinked. What do you think she meant? She meant don't trust people who don't stay. Daniels and Harris locked eyes. That one sentence said more than anything they'd seen in that apartment. But just when it seemed like Journey couldn't possibly carry anything more, she asked one quiet question that cracked them both open. Journey waited until Ms. Darnell stepped out to make a call before she spoke again. Her voice was soft, almost like she was asking permission. Are they going to take me away? Daniels crouched down in front of her. Nobody's here to take you away. They're just trying to make sure you're safe while your grandma gets better. But I am safe, she insisted. I've been taking care of her. I always do. There was no whining in her tone, no fear in the usual sense. It was just matter of fact, like she'd accepted a job the world never intended a child to have. Daniels felt something knot tight in his chest. Journey, Harris said gently, leaning forward. How long have you been the one making sure things are okay at home? She thought for a moment, lips pressed together. Since the winter. Grandma's legs don't work like they used to. I walk to the store when we need food, but we don't always have money. So, sometimes we just have oatmeal. She tells me I'm her little soldier. Harris exhaled slowly. You shouldn't have to be a soldier at 8. Journey looked down at her notebook. If I don't, who will? Daniels stood and rubbed the back of his neck. He had 2 kids of his own, a boy, 10, and a girl, just a year younger than Journey. The thought of them navigating the world with no one to catch them made his stomach twist. We can't just leave her with paperwork and CPS, Daniels muttered to Harris. You think I don't know that? Harris shot back quietly. But what are we supposed to do? You know how this goes. Case gets assigned, kid gets placed somewhere, then she's just a name in a file. Daniels shook his head. Not this time. He stepped back toward Journey. What do you need, kiddo? What's one thing we could get you right now that would help? She looked up slowly. Grandma says when you don't know what to do, you start with a warm meal. Harris glanced at Daniels. All right then, let's start there. They took a short break, grabbing sandwiches and bottled water from the hospital cafeteria. When they returned, Journey had barely moved from her seat. Is this for me? She asked, almost surprised. Yep, turkey and cheese, and I brought chips. Harris placed the tray in front of her. No oatmeal tonight. She picked up the sandwich and took a small bite, chewing carefully as if saving every crumb. Daniels sat across from her. Journey, does anyone at your school know what's been going on? A teacher? A neighbor? She shook her head. I don't tell people. Grandma says folks don't really listen unless they already care about you. Daniels tilted his head. And do you think we care? She paused, studying him. I don't know yet. That hit him harder than he expected. Miss Darnell returned, clipboard in hand, looking slightly frustrated. We don't have any relatives on record. I called the emergency contact number on one of the hospital forms, disconnected. This might have to go through the county. Journey's grip on her notebook tightened. County means strangers, right? Ms. Darnell hesitated. Sometimes, but it's only until your grandma can take care of you again. No, Journey said quietly. I don't like strangers. Daniels and Harris shared a glance that said everything. They weren't about to let this girl vanish into some overworked system. Ms. Darnell, give us a minute, Daniels said. When she stepped away, Harris sighed. You're about to do something reckless, aren't you? Reckless? Daniels said. No, human. He leaned down to Journey. We're not going to let you feel alone, all right? You've done more than any kid should. Tonight, we'll make sure you're okay. I promise. Journey's eyes flickered with something between doubt and hope. But just as things seemed to calm, an unexpected visitor walked into the ER, someone who would change the conversation completely. The ER doors hissed open, and in walked a woman in a green shirt with a badge clipped to her waist and a tote bag slung over her shoulder, mid-30s, straightforward eyes, no clipboard, no fake smile. Daniels recognized her right away. Marla Jensen, he said, shaking his head. Didn't expect to see you here tonight. I was on rotation when CPS flagged the case, she replied, eyeing him. Didn't think I'd be walking into something this, involved. Harris raised an eyebrow. You mean tragic? No, she said flatly. I mean complicated. She looked down at Journey, who now clutched her notebook like it was her lifeline. You must be Journey, she said gently. Journey didn't respond. She's been through a lot, Daniel said quickly. Grandma collapsed this morning. No food in the house, no electricity in the bedroom. She's been taking care of everything herself for months. Marla nodded. And you're both still in uniform, which means technically this isn't your case anymore. Daniel stepped forward. No offense, Marla, but I'm not handing her off to a system that can't remember her name tomorrow morning. Marla didn't flinch. I don't want that either. Harris leaned against the wall, arms crossed. So what happens now? Marla pulled out her tablet. Well, if the hospital keeps Grandma overnight, which it sounds like they will, then legally, Journey can't be left here alone. She either stays in the hospital under emergency protective custody, or she goes to foster care tonight. Journey's eyes widened. I don't want to go nowhere. Daniels knelt beside her. We're going to figure this out, okay? Just sit tight. Marla turned slightly. We're short on placement homes tonight. Closest one is Amarillo. That's over an hour away. She doesn't even know those people, Harris said. She doesn't know me either, Marla replied. But I'm not the one making that decision. The law is. Daniel stood. Let me take her. Marla blinked. What? I've got space. My wife's home. My kids are close in age. I'll take her for the night. That's not how this works, Troy. It should be. Marla looked torn. We need court approval, paperwork, background checks. You know the drill. Even if you're a cop, you can't just take a kid home because it feels right. But you can send her across the state to strangers? He asked, voice rising. Journey flinched at the tone. Harris stepped in. Hey, let's all slow down. Daniels backed off, breathing heavy, rubbing his forehead. Marla sighed and tapped her tablet. Let me make some calls. See if there's any emergency placements available closer. No promises. She walked off to the far corner of the room and dialed. Journey whispered, I don't want to leave Grandma. Daniel sat beside her. We know. Even if she's sleeping, I want to be close. You will be. I'll make sure of it. Harris stayed standing, arms crossed, eyes on Marla as she paced during the call. After a few minutes, she returned. All right, she said. We have one option. Temporary kinship care, supervised. If someone can take her overnight and return in the morning to finalize paperwork, I can make that work. Daniels looked at her, stunned. Seriously? You said your wife's home, right? She's a teacher. She's good with kids. She'll understand. Marla hesitated. Okay, but I'm putting my name on the line here. He nodded. You won't regret it. Harris stepped toward Journey. How do you feel about staying with Officer Daniels for a night? His kids are your age. You'd sleep in a real bed, warm food. We'd bring you right back in the morning. Journey looked up at Daniels. Will Grandma know where I went? I'll tell the nurse to leave her a note, he said. You'll be just a few minutes down the road. She didn't answer right away, just stood, notebook still in hand. Then she nodded once. I guess that's okay. Harris exhaled and put a hand on Daniels' shoulder. You sure about this? No, Daniels said, grabbing his keys, but I'm sure I can't let her ride off with a stranger tonight. But what happened at his house that night revealed even more about how deep this child's strength ran, and how broken the system truly was. Daniels drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on his knee. Journey sat quietly in the back seat, her notebook hugged tight against her chest. She didn't look out the window. She didn't ask where they were going. She just stared straight ahead, blinking slow, like her mind was stuck somewhere far from the moving car. They pulled into a small one-story house just outside the city line. White siding, red door, overgrown bushes. A dented basketball hoop leaned over the driveway. Daniels cut the engine and turned around. This is my place. My wife's name is Patrice. You'll like her. She's nicer than me. Journey gave a small shrug. Inside, Patrice was already waiting by the door. Early 40s, tall, warm eyes, hair pulled into a scarf. She didn't ask questions, just stepped aside to let them in and knelt to Journey's level. Hi there, sweetheart. I'm Patrice. I heard you had a long day. Journey didn't speak, but she didn't pull away when Patrice reached out and gently touched her shoulder. We made some spaghetti if you're hungry, Patrice offered, and I found a nightgown you might be able to fit into. Nothing fancy, just soft. Daniel stood back and watched them. He didn't know if it was the food or the tone of Patrice's voice, but something in Journey eased just a bit. Not much, but enough. They sat at the kitchen table. Journey ate slowly, carefully. She never took her eyes off the plate, never asked for seconds, even when it was clear she could have eaten more. Their kids were already asleep, but Patrice had set up a spot for Journey in the guest room. Soft pillows, a fuzzy blanket, a little lamp shaped like a cloud. After dinner, Daniels knocked on the doorframe. You okay? Journey nodded from the edge of the bed. Her notebook sat on her lap again. Daniels stepped in. You writing something? She looked up. I wrote your names, so I don't forget who helped. He smiled, then sat down on the floor beside the bed. You know, most people would have just sat there and waited. You got up. You walked blocks to find help. That's not easy. Journey didn't answer, just turned to a blank page and scribbled slowly. I wrote a new rule, she said. Yeah, what's that? She turned the notebook so he could read. If it's really bad, find someone who stays. Daniels blinked hard. That's a good one. She leaned back into the pillows, pulling the blanket up. Do you think Grandma's still sleeping? I think she's resting, and I think the doctors are doing everything they can. Journey gave a soft nod, and within minutes her eyes closed. Not peacefully, not like a child without worries, but with the kind of exhaustion you only see in someone who's carried too much, too early. Daniels sat there a while longer before quietly stepping out and pulling the door closed. The next morning, he took her back to the hospital. Miss Laverne was stable but still unconscious. The doctor said it would be a few more days before they'd know more, but she was alive. That mattered. CPS arrived with paperwork, this time less rushed. Daniels and Patrice signed temporary guardianship for a week, long enough to give Journey a break, a real one. For the first time, Journey smiled. Not big, not for long, but it was there. Over the next few days, things moved slowly. Community services finally showed up. Neighbors who had once looked the other way came forward with donations. Someone from a local church offered to fix the broken stair rail outside Laverne's apartment. A teacher called from the school, shocked, apologetic, offering tutoring help once Journey was ready to come back. Journey started sleeping through the night. Patrice taught her how to make banana pancakes. Harris even showed up one morning with sketchbooks and colored pencils. Just in case you want to draw what you can't write down, he'd said. When Laverne finally woke up in the ICU, the first name she asked for was her granddaughter. And when Journey walked in holding a new notebook, this one with a red heart sticker on the cover, she whispered, I didn't let go, Grandma. I did what you said. Laverne tried to lift her hand. She couldn't quite reach, but it didn't matter. They were both still here, still together. This wasn't a story about charity. It wasn't about pity. It was about paying attention. About not letting the quiet kids slip through the cracks. About listening when someone too small to be noticed says something big. Journey Wallace didn't just save her grandmother's life. She reminded two grown men of the very reason they put on a badge in the first place. Not to enforce rules, but to protect the ones no one else sees. If this story moved you, don't just feel something, do something. Look around your own neighborhood, ask a question, check on someone. Be the person who stays. Because sometimes the strongest voice in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one that whispers, "Can you follow me home?"